very often people go off on charges that don't really consider the big picture. And so, Zoe, you have learned something from improv comedy, 4 rules that help us find the right fit for our energies when we want to cause change. Talk to us about the improv comedy rules.
Sure. So, even though I live in rural Maine, which is far from the centers of comedy like New York and Chicago and LA, we have this couple who are Second City trained improvisers. And they moved here and they have been performing and teaching. And I've been taking classes with them for a long time. And they taught these 4 rules of improv comedy that I quickly realized were completely applicable to life in general and specifically to being a solutionary. So, the first rule of improv comedy is to build relationships. So, you imagine 2 people coming on stage and they're going to create a scene. And maybe one of them says to the other one, "Hey, mom, I just entered us into the parent child acrobatic competition at school." So mom, in the role of mom, responds, "That's great, Brian. We can wear the pink polka dot leotards that I purchased on eBay." Okay, so what happened just then? What happened is that a relationship was established immediately. One of the actors said, "Mom," the other actor said, "Brian." We've got a relationship. If we don't establish relationships, we are going to be hard pressed to solve problems. Now, here's the thing. If you get on stage with somebody, they could say something you don't agree with, you don't like, you don't get, you don't really want to go down that path. But if you're an improv comedian, you have to. You have to accept that relationship and then build that relationship. And the same thing is true if we want to solve problems. There are going to be people we can't relate to, we don't agree with, we might not like what they say. But if we are not willing to establish a relationship, then we are not able to do what needs to be done with that person in order to create change. So, this first rule of improv comedy is essential to all of the other ones, and that's why it's the first rule. The second rule is embracing yes and. So when Brian said, "Mom, I entered us into the parent child acrobatic competition," Mom immediately accepted that role. She said yes to being in the role of mom. And then she added to it by talking about the pink polka dot leotards. That was the and. So if that actor had said, "What are you talking about? I'm not your mother and I don't do acrobatics," the scene would have crashed. There'd be nowhere to go. So yes and is when we find a place where we can agree and we add to it. Now, I realize that yes and is really challenging when we have serious disagreements. So, for example, I'm somebody who is pro choice. I have friends who are pro life. Where can we find a yes that we can agree on so that we can maybe find an and? Well, you know what? We can both agree that it would be good if as few girls and women had unwanted pregnancies as possible. We can absolutely agree on that. What are the ands? It's not going to be easy, but can we find any ands? I have influenced people who are pro-life to be willing to accept and support Plan B, the morning after pill, because they see that as a way forward, even though I know it's not going to work for everybody who's pro-life, who thinks that, life begins at conception no matter what. So all I'm saying is that if you can find that point of agreement, there is the possibility of finding ways forward to maybe collaborate, maybe build bridges, maybe not hate each other, maybe not fight each other, just little steps. So that's yes and. The third improv rule is to bring the love. So what do I mean by bring the love? Well, in terms of improv comedy, arguments don't tend to be particularly funny on stage. So improv comedians just avoid arguments and they focus on bringing love. I mean, there are a few comedians who can make arguments funny, like Larry David, but most really can't. And so, how can we bring the love in real life? Well, that also seems like, oh, so Pollyannish and so simplistic, like bringing the love, that sounds all nicey nice. But the reality is that bringing the love is really hard work, really hard. So picture yourself driving in some traffic uh, to work, you're commuting, and all around you are people driving next to you. Nobody's hitting anybody. There's no accidents. Everybody is following the rules and everybody's driving well. Do you experience love for all these people around you? Probably not. I can't even imagine the person thinking, like, oh, thumbs up, love you, great job. But as soon as somebody cuts you off, oh my gosh, you're laying on the horn. You're just filled with like immediate rage. Like rage comes so fast. Love can be really hard. And I'll give you a personal example that happened a couple of years ago. So, right after Putin invaded Ukraine, and I was consuming all of the news about that, and I was deeply distraught. I had gone for a walk with my husband on a hike in Acadia National Park, which is where near where we live. And when we got back to the parking lot, and I heard some people speaking Russian, which is a language I've studied, a language I love. We spent many years trying to adopt a boy from Russia. We were never able to get him out of Russia, but I love him to this day. And so there were these people speaking Russian. And I suddenly felt a wave of adrenaline. I was so angry. I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing here? Walking, like taking a leisurely walk while your president has just invaded this country. Why aren't you working? Like, how can you not be doing anything else but working to stop this? And I'm filled with all these thoughts. I mean, I don't even know if they're Russian. You know, plenty of Ukrainians speak Russian. Like, they might not have been Russians, but I'm filled with all these thoughts and feelings and anger, so sudden. And then one of them happened to come up to me because we'd just done this hike and they wanted to know some information about the hike and asked me some questions. And I just took a deep breath. I was incredibly friendly and nice and loving. I brought the love. I hadn't been feeling it initially. I brought the love. And then later I'm reflecting on this, thinking, what did that anger serve? Nobody. It didn't serve me. It didn't serve them. It was based on assumptions and judgments that like hadn't been validated. It could have burnt bridges instead of built them. So bringing the love, it's fairly easy for improv comedians because they're trying to do that. In real life, we know that not everybody's trying to do it. Like, look at the tweet that just came through. Not the person wasn't trying to bring the love. Like,
Right.
all of our anger and hostility, like that gets the follows and the reshares and all of that. So, bringing the love, my goodness, it takes work. Can I tell you one more example?
Absolutely. I love examples.
Okay. So I recently wrote a blog post on teen anxiety and depression, which, as many people know, is on the rise. It's reaching epidemic proportions.
Mm,
And I
so
wrote about how learning to be a solutionary was an antidote to this. It was really helping young people as they learn to be solutionaries, that despair and that anxiety diminishes. So I wrote this article and it was published in an online news source. And there was the first comment basically just said the word solutionary is so stupid, and he couldn't even read any further. And it was just very dismissive and angry and hostile. Now, I could have ignored it. And I decided, I'm going to bring the love. I'm going to bring it so hard. So I shared with him that, you know, about 10% of the people we actually did a survey, and about 10% of people really don't like this word solutionary. They do think it's kind of dumb and, you know, why do we use it? A lot more people like it than don't like it. And I told him I'm one of those people who likes it. But that I really thought that if he read the article and he could get beyond the word, he might see some value in what the concept was trying to do. So he reads the article and he messages back, and you know, we have a back and forth, and I'm just bringing more and more love, as much love as I can bring. And by the end, he apologized and he was on board with, not the word, he didn't like the word, but he was on board with the effort. And you know, yes, that takes time, it takes energy, but I got to tell you, I was on cloud nine afterwards. The fact that I could meet hostility with love, it felt to me like I was doing a spiritual practice for myself, really made me feel better. And obviously it made everything better. So that, oh, and we have one more we have one more improv rule, and that is to help others shine. So by that, that's what you're doing, right? You are shining the light on the good things that are happening in the world. You shine the light on what is good, and then you amplify it. And in amplifying it, then there's a greater chance it will be replicated and used and shared, and that just benefits everybody. So if we can take ourselves out of the spotlight a little bit and amplify the efforts wherever we see them, it's a humbling, and it ultimately brings about a better world.